Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Today's topic is the safety of dams in Connecticut. I'm speaking with Andrew Fisk from the organization American Rivers.
Where states like Connecticut have programs that say to dam owners, you need to inspect your dam. We have characterized your dam in regard to its stability and whether there's a downstream risk were it to fail. And for those dams like the one owned by Basra Waterworks, Yantic, it was a high-hazard dam, and they weren't meeting their obligations in the state program. And it's incredibly fortunate that there was no injury or loss of human life, but there was damage from the flooding, and that was contributed to by that partial breach of that dam. So we're concerned about river health. And river health means they can flow in ways that doesn't increase flooding and doesn't cause downstream damage.
Is something like this partially at least a reflection of any regulations the state of Connecticut has to regulate that sort of thing, especially when dams are in kind of a passive situation where other people are not normally paying very much attention to them?
Right. And I think when you look around the country, Connecticut has a good dam safety program. So there's good requirements in law. What I think was missing was there wasn't any compulsion on Basra Waterworks because they weren't in compliance. They didn't have an emergency action plan. And further, there's no real compulsion for those dams that are both high hazard and in poor repair to be able to remove them or fix them. And so I think that's something that is important for the state to consider in light of this incident. And I think another aspect of Connecticut where you could see improvement is in some states, the property owners downstream are alerted that they are actually within a zone if that dam were to breach where they would be impacted, right? And so that idea of notification to the downstream property owners is incredibly important. And I think that gives them notice and, frankly, could put some more pressure on that dam owner to make those decisions, take it out or repair it. So I think we can continue to do more to advance public safety and, frankly, accelerate really important decisions that need to be made, hundreds and hundreds of individual decisions at these dams. They need to be taken out or they need to be repaired. And from American Rivers' perspective, more often than not, removal will benefit river health, will benefit those critters that live in the river, will make the communities in those where those rivers flow safer and more adapted to climate change. And it is a net benefit versus leaving these older dams in place like the Basra Waterworks. It was built 100 years ago. So we want to be able to accelerate that conversation and get unnecessary, poorly maintained and high hazard dams removed to make our communities safe.
Two questions based upon what you just said. One is the last point you made about downstream business owners and property owners. It sounds a little to me offhand by how you described it, that it would put people like that or businesses like that in what amounts to a floodplain if a dam fails like that.
Correct. It's not so much a floodplain, it's an inundation zone, right? And it could actually be wider or larger than what would be a FEMA floodplain map. Okay. It may or may not, but often is not inundation zones because you've got a lot of water behind a dam that's going to be released all at once. It's actually going to could occupy more than what would be that floodplain. And it doesn't put that property in a permanent floodplain in terms of FEMA zoning or insurance. It's just in anticipation of that one-time event.
Okay, thank you.
So it really is just a straight notice.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. Another point I'd like to pursue with you for a few moments Andrew, is because Connecticut had so many businesses, mills and things like that over a course of time, quite a long time ago, and utilized water power pent up by dams like here in Vernon, for instance, Vernon, Connecticut, where I'm located, where there's a reservoir called Snipsit that fed the downstream businesses. Are many of these dams where they are and why they are, or originally why they were, because they were used as water power, and now that that's no longer necessary, it might benefit, as you pointed out, that they just be taken out?
Yes. So many dams were created for either mechanical power, like turning a water wheel, or were developed to generate hydropower. We've had hydropower turbines for a very long time. So yes, I think it is a safe generalization to say many of these dams that are no longer meeting their original purpose, that purpose was to generate power. And one facet of this question about these dams, there is an ongoing conversation in Connecticut about retrofitting these existing dams for small, very small or small hydro generation. And it's an active conversation now. And so from American River's perspective, we do not support the retrofitting of these dams with modern hydropower turbines for a number of reasons. Now, we are very supportive of renewable energy and climate mitigation, but you need to do that in ways and places that have the benefits much better than the costs. And what you see at these dams, some of which are being held onto in the hopes that one day they could be retrofitted with modern turbines, is you see a very small amount of electricity that would be generated, right, relative to what the state needs. And instead, you're continuing to have these blockages in our river systems that are impairing restoration of fish species, increasing flooding risks, et cetera. And so our position is hydropower, where it exists and it's generating, larger amounts of electricity, that's going to stay for a while, right? Let's not continue to keep our rivers blocked up with small-scale hydro that is very expensive to retrofit and returns a very small amount of electricity. And you may be familiar with like the size and scope of energy needs.
Yes.
But these facilities some of them are less than 1 megawatt. Some of them are 2 or 3 megawatts. The region, a large-scale project on the Housatonic is 50 or 60 megawatts. That's a project that's generating a lot of electricity. Putting a turbine in the Basra Waterworks dam, which has been proposed, doesn't make sense economically. It doesn't make sense from energy needs. And frankly, it's too much of a cost versus the small benefits.
So as is often the case, then, if I understand you correctly, oftentimes scale matters. And when the scale is too small, then it cancels itself out in large measure.
Correct.
Does your organization lobby actively in the political realm, in state legislatures, or in the National Congress?
We do, yes. We have national conversations around, for example, in this instance, dam safety, and we also have conversations at the state level. So nationally, the National Dam Safety Program needs to be reauthorized by Congress. That program provides funds to state programs and is very important for setting standards. And then at the state level, we need to continue to maintain and improve programs.
From the organization American Rivers, that was Northeast Regional Representative Andrew Fisk. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049. 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer for the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.